PALPASA cafe. A paper bird came flying down from the balcony and landed by my seat in the Birendra International Convention Center. And it was written, "When's the novel going to be published, Mr. Coffeeguff?" The curtains would soon be raised and singer Deep Swisser would begin his performance. Seconds before the lights went down, I passed a note to my friends. They read it and chuckled. Over the next 2 hours, Deep sang many songs, old and new, his voice flowing with the rhythm of the orchestra. I came from afar. Deep sang while I read the note again and wondered who had written it. I looked up at the balcony, straining in the darkness, but could make out only a black mass of people. When Deep began to sing Saili Bari in the tea garden, I thought I saw someone in the balcony wave to me, but I couldn't be sure. I had stopped writing my weekly column, Coffee Guff, in the Kantipur Daily newspaper to make time to finish a novel. One of my colleagues joked, "You are a newspaper editor. What makes you think you can write?" Another cheated me. A journalist shouldn't write fiction. Even events in my country seemed to be conspiring against my novel. A series of shocking incidents had occurred at a breathtaking speed in the lives of my countrymen, in the life of my protagonist. The line between fact and fiction was blurry. Kathmandu had been washed clean by the winter rains. I headed for Tamil, checking in the cold air mixed with the scent of wet earth. I passed some young people on motorbikes heading for Nagarkot. "It must be snowing up there," they shouted to one another. There was a long line of cars going to Bhaktapur. I thought that if the sky cleared, I might even get a glimpse of snow-capped mountains from a rooftop restaurant. Just I was about to climb the stairs, a waiter called from the top. "I saw a photograph of you recently." I stopped at the bottom, he said. "You were writing and exhaling smoke." So what's the big deal? I thought. At least it wasn't smoke from the barrel of a gun. The waiter went on. "Were you writing in one of the restaurants around here?" I didn't bother to answer. "Is the table free up there?" I asked. I went upstairs, sat down, ordered a pot of coffee, and phoned Drisha on my mobile. "I'm on my way," he said, sounding harassed. I hung up. I wanted one last interview with him before finishing my book. It was based on his story, after all, and I needed a few more details to make it as true to life as possible. The novel was a portrait of his world. It was the music of his experience and his imagination. A painter. He was my novel's only rightful critic. He was the one who had inspired me to write it in the first place. Drisha was like a painting to me and I, his enraptured viewer. I had written my novel in such a way that readers could mistake his story for my own. Drisha had a dream project. He dreamt of blending art and coffee on the canvas of the Western Hills. He wanted to establish a resort built in the local architectural style and surrounded by sprawling coffee plantations where connoisseurs of art and coffee could experience something unique. The resort would have a library, an art gallery, and internet facilities. He had told me about his dream. He had named it PALPASA Cafe. Drisya was going to the hills soon to begin his project. I wanted to read my novel out loud to him before he left. PALPASA Cafe was his future. He had told me. A ladder spiraling up from the left of the art gallery would take visitors past the library to the cafe. From there, they would see a wonderful view of hills and in clear weather the mountains in the distance covered with snow. Palpasa Cafe would have gardens with flowers that perfumed the air all year around, where migrating birds could rest on their regional flights. Visitors would be able to reach the base camp of the mountains after a 4-day trek. I wasn't sure the situation in the country was conducive to the realization of his dream. How I wondered, could Ricia find the strength to face all the uncertainties? His determination impressed me, especially because I thought that the country had already raised its hand in surrender. Defeating his dream, he alone was standing, defiant. A cat meowed, approaching my table. An article about my novel published in Nepal magazine had mentioned another cat in another restaurant I frequented, my favorite restaurant. This cat looked like that one and, like the other cat, jumped onto the curled up in my lap. Beside my table, the flowers of the potted punicity thrust themselves forcibly out of the building stairs. After I've finished my coffee, I phoned Risha again. "5 friends have arrived," he said, still sounding harassed. "I'll come after they leave." "Which friends?" I wondered. "Order me something in the meantime," he said before hanging up. I'd soon find out these weren't his friends at all. The cat in my lap looked at me serenely as I sipped my coffee, unaware of all the events taking place in the lives of the people around it. It lived in a blissful world of its own. Not many cats were so lucky. Tourists from all over the world come to this restaurant. Even now, a tourist at a nearby table was turning her camera towards me to take a photo of the cat. I wasn't sure if I was included in the frame, but nonetheless grew worry. In times like this, even small things make us paranoid. My mobile rang. A reporter was calling. The Maoists had looted and bombed a bus. "No casualties," he said, "but my report might get there a bit late. The district headquarters is still very tense. There was a sound of gunfire this morning, and now students are throwing stones from inside the campus. Why don't you buy a bloody computer and email your reports like everyone else, instead of replying on the PC or fax machine?" I said, unable to hide my irritation. "I would have if you had opted an advance," he shot back. I hung up. Drisya still had not arrived. I began to wonder whether he would come at all. I was fascinated by his dream project and wanted to know more about it. What did the village around Palpasa Cafe look like? I imagined a small house with slanted roofs, dark wooden doors, and clay-washed walls, their verandas dotted with tiny pits made by raindrops. I hoped Drisya would take me there one day. I phoned him again, but someone else picked up the phone. They took him. They took him," she cried. I recognized the voice of Fulan Chowdhury, Drisya's secretary. Now it was my turn to panic. "What? Where?" I asked. "5 strangers came," she said breathlessly. "They said they needed to ask him some questions. They said they were security personnel, but they weren't wearing uniforms. He didn't even take him his mobile." Had Drisya's friends abducted him? "Are you sure?" I asked. "Absolutely," she shouted. "Can't something be done? He isn't even wearing the same shoes." Fulan's panic infected me. How could Drisya have been abducted in broad daylight? Since the man had been wearing ordinary clothes, no one on the street would suspect anything. I learned later that they had made him walk a short distance, then put him in an unmarked van parked nearby. And all the while, I had been sitting in this restaurant waiting for him, thinking about his dream project. I had been waiting to read him his story while he, the protagonist of my novel, my first reader, was being abducted. I phoned an armor general I knew. He said nothing could be done at this time. I knew only too well that it was now common practice to arrest people without a warrant, and I also knew how difficult it was to discover the whereabouts of such people once they had been arrested. But I called around months, monotonous, trying to talk to the chief of army. He was apparently in a meeting. Talk to the spokesperson, a major advised me. When I hang up, the waiter, always very eager to serve, asked, "Have you placed your order, sir?" "What order?" I snapped. My mobile rang again. It was another district correspondent. "I'm sorry, but I have to dictate a story to you," he said. "No one's answering the phone at the district bureau." What time? I picked up a napkin to jot down the story. A patrol of the Unified Command lost contact with district headquarters after being ambushed by Maoists this morning about 8 kilometers to the east. This was nothing new. We publish stories like this every day. Today's newspaper already carried an almost identical story. Tomorrow's would as well. It was the same thing every day. Security personnel losing contact with headquarters, landmines, bomb blasts, the killing of the suspected spies, deaths of victims being rushed to health posts. Did newspapers here exist only to publish body counts? "Is that it?" I asked the reporter. "There's one more report," he said. I picked up another napkin. 7 children died after temperature dropped to a record low due to heavy snow in the western part of the district. Afterwards, I reread that I had written. The ink on the napkins seemed to have changed from blue to red, as though my writing had somehow changed languages. I folded the napkins and put them in my pocket. My coffee was cold. From the street outside the restaurant, I could hear some students chanting, "Democracy forever." I asked the waiter what was happening, and he said security personnel had fired at the students after failing to control them with batons. I ordered tomato soup and french fries. It was growing windy and cold. I could hear Tibetan music playing somewhere. From where I was sitting, I could see on the main road a sign written in large letters, "Democracy forever, long live Nepal." What had happened on the campus was this. A loudspeaker had just announced the results of the mock referendum held by the students. Democracy had won by a landslide. Shortly after this announcement, police officer had entered the campus, trampling on "Democracy forever, long live Nepal." The students were demonstrating in protest. My thoughts returned to Drisya, who had abducted him, and where had they taken him? Would he come back safely? What if his abductors were to claim later that he had been killed in an encounter? Then I would have to search for the right words to cover the news of his death. How many columns would take? And what did it matter anyway? It was all nonsense. But who were these men? And why had they abducted him? Did they want to question him about the trick he had made? Had they found out about his friendship with Siddhartha? Was there something about his dream project that made them suspicious? Evening set in. Tamil came alive with colored lights. The cat jumped off my lap onto the table, and examined the notebook in which I had made my notes on Drissy's life. I started leafing through the papers, thinking about the constitution of our country. Every paragraph made me think about the fundamental rights our constitution was supposed to guarantee. But now it was possible for the protagonist of my novel to disappear because those responsible for upholding these rights had become their most flagrant violators. First, they hijacked the constitution, then they kidnapped Drisha. Should I publish the news of his abduction today? Fulan was sure to issue a public statement appealing for his release. Colleague in my newsroom would say, there are a few similar appeals, but they all into the report. Put them all into one report, and Drisya would become just another name in a long list of the disappeared. Fulan phoned again. You should be careful, she said. Those men also took away some documents and photos. So, I asked. You were in some of the photos, she said.